at different levels of analysis, eating a donut is good or bad. If you analyze my neurotransmitters or the amount of dopamine being segregated in my brain, you can have the certainty that I like the donut. But do I like the liking of the donut? I do not. I hate that. I would change that taste if I could instantly. If I have a list of the tastes I hold or I have, I would erase that and I would put broccoli, or
does that not, I'm sure you have an answer to this, so walk with me on this question. Does that not trip you out though? The fact that, and again, none of these are new concepts, but that biologically you like that donut. Consciously, for lack of a better word, you do not like that donut. Why can't you, because we do have maybe a gift of consciousness, why does the biology win? Maybe is the question. Like, so pick broccoli, just pick broccoli.
But are you claiming that me not liking my liking of the donut is in some way apart from my biology?
Doesn't it have to be? Well, no. Let me stop there. It's not apart from your biology, but those two concepts, you cannot hold those two concepts. They are completely incongruent, right? They're diametrically opposed. You liking it and you not liking it.
They are congruent because they are existent simultaneously at different levels of analysis. At the level of homeostasis of an environment which is super different to our current one, it was correct to seek for whatever amount of sugar you can get get access to. And the same thing applies to everything. If there's multiple layers of thought occurring simultaneously in our brains, and the most basic one might tell you to rape people in the street to have so you can maximize the spreading of your genes, because that was the strategy that it was predominantly used before in our evolutionary history. But that doesn't mean that another layer of consciousness can be added to that with prefrontal cortex being able to.
Who's the real you, in the spirit of a Sam Harris type question? Who is the real Alex, and what does he actually believe?
There's no you.
Even those words fail, but I think you understand the spirit of it.
There's no you. The self doesn't exist. It's not a coherent concept.
Self doesn't. So say more. I know what you mean, but say more about that.
We tend to perceive I've just had a great guest in my show that explained this in a much better way than I could. Jay Garfield is an absolute mastermind about this. Masterful experience having a conversation with him. But I will try to articulate in whatever manner I can what the theory about the inexistence of the self is, with which I agree. But that doesn't mean that I can articulate it successfully. I think that we tend to perceive ourselves as having a locus of control, somewhere where the causal order of the universe isn't affected. Your brain is not subject to cause and effect in the same way that a mango is. You can cut it, you can destroy it, you can eat it, but there is something in you who intuitively feel this that is not subject to cause and effect, which is apart from everything, and so allows you to not just be the effect of some previous cause, which we are. And we are embedded in the universe. We're just part of it. It's hard to get rid of this illusion, but you can. I think meditation helps in this, and realizing how the thing that has helped me realize this in a tangible manner the most possible is realizing that you've got no idea what the next word you utter will be. I've got no idea what the next one will be. Thoughts just come from where? I've got no idea. I'm not aware of that. And that also happens when you choose between two things. Okay, you choose between A and B, but were you choosing to choose? You were not. You just presuppose the choosing. Okay, so let's say you choose between A and B. You haven't chosen to choose. So there's always a retrospective analysis that you can do to come into darkness and realize that hey, there's some cause and effect going on here, which I haven't been the author of, because I, as a concept, doesn't exist.
I buy that. I buy that in the spirit of the cause and effect point, because I agree with that. I personally believe, I often call, to me, that's logic. People hear logic, they think different things. To me, logic in its purest form is something happened that caused something else to happen. And if you apply that to the universe, logic is a universal principle. Everything has happened for a reason, quite literally. We like to go back to the point of the Big Bang as the starting point. Likely it goes prior to that and why the Big Bang and all that. But if you had a supercomputer that could do this, you could go from the Big Bang and look at all the things that happened that led to you and I having this conversation right now, which gets very much to a conversation about free will, in that free will must not exist then, right? Because all of those things were in a sequence of events of motion, which I think ties very much to your point, or the concept of the theory about self, that self doesn't exist. It's an interesting thing because it does beg the question, as it often does, how are we defining self? I think how we're defining self is to say a being, as you said, that exists outside of cause and effect. You have the ability to make decisions disconnected from the universe and the sequence that was started and whenever it started. And I think I agree with that. Let me stop there. Like, all right, so I get the theory. If I'm saying it correctly, you tell me. If not, obviously correct it. But what do you feel? How do you feel about that? Do you have any feel? And now that's a funny question, because your feeling is meaningless in the spirit of that, right? Your feeling is just that sequence of events, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is your feeling about that?
I don't think there's a way of getting away from logic. There's what would being apart from logic be? Can you even start defining that? I don't think so. And even if you were able to do it hypothetically in a hypothetical stance or universe in which logic didn't reign, what your decisions were created by would be a random concatenations of acts that you do not want to be the responsible of your acting. You want your acting to be created by feelings that you reflectively endorse. You do not want your acting to be caused randomly. So that debunks free will in the deepest way possible.
I agree. I'm sure you've come across people that hear the word logic, hear the idea that we are just a sequence of events, that logic does reign supreme, and they want to throw up. Right? Deeply, I'm not categorizing people, but deeply spiritual people that rely on intuition and have this belief that our minds are so incomplete and that there's so much more. There's all these different things. I would argue what they're saying is still falls within the reins of logic. Do you sit in the same place? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
is there
sure.
any credence to what they say? Is it possible that any of it is valid?
Yeah, there's literal truth and there's metaphorical truth. But let me first do a comment about what you said about logic. There's a great book by Steven Pinker called Rationality, and there's a quote in it. Let me see if I can remember it correctly. That there's no, I'm not quoting it literally, but the gist is here. There's no way of arguing against logic with logic. You are using logic in order to be able to argue against some logic. So by starting the debate, you're getting away from the debate.
You've lost it.
You cannot even start it. So those people who hold their logics to be true are at the same time saying that logic itself doesn't make sense. Okay, but God exists, and that's a logical statement. And I'm saying that logic isn't the thing that we should be ruling our lives by. So it's not coherent. It's just not something that you would rigorously hold a debate with.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think it's the perfect response to it. It still leaves the door open to where we were before, that there may be things that we like. I think Kant talked about this, the idea of cause and effect, and that's kind of the overarching a priori concept. It's one of them, right? We have to entertain the idea that maybe there is something beyond cause and effect. By definition, that concept came from humans. We created it. So by definition, it may be limited right there. There may be things well beyond that. To us, that feels like base level. It has to be something happens, then something else happens. That doesn't even seem like you and I can question or debate that. But we have to entertain the idea that maybe there are concepts that we can't even fathom that exist that override cause and effect. That is possible, right? Are we good on that?